Good morning. We're live on YouTube. This is the Falcons Podcast. We're going to bring in our Facebook groups as well, the Atlanta Falcons fans on all Falcons, and probably going to change out to Atlanta Falcons on SI here shortly. So keep an eye out for that. And Scott Kennedy Sports. Get those rolling, and we'll get in here. We'll have some conversations. It's been a week, so we got some things to talk about. Good morning, everybody. This is the Falcons Podcast. Welcome in. My name is Scott Kennedy. I'll be your host. This guy over here is I'm not in Denver Broncos country. That's where I was. You can tell where I was last time. Let's change that. We'll move real quick over to Mercedes-Benz. There we go. We get the background changed. Apologies. It's been a busy couple of weeks. And I'm kind of flustered all over the place here, but we got a lot to talk about. There's lots I want to hit on, Nick. I want to hit on the Benjamin Albright discussion that Russell Wilson and Justin Fields to the Atlanta Falcons was a reality, but it came with a big catch. We'll talk about that. Would you rather? And now I've got the song "Wouldn't You Rather" in my head from Tremonti. We'll talk about the top 100 players list that Pete Prisco on CBS put out. The Falcons had 3. Should they have more? More importantly, will they have more? And then the third one was the offseason grades from our guy, Seth Walder, who hasn't seen an Atlanta Falcons move that he hasn't crapped on in 4 years. So very interesting to get on all of those. Nick, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. We just got back from our first little family vacation with the little guy, which was both stressful and fun. It's crazy how much just crap you have to bring to travel with an infant. There was just 3 of us, and the Jeep was absolutely freaking packed. We're supposed to go to the San Juan Islands in 2 weeks, and we're adding my wife's mother. So I don't know how the heck we're going to be able to fit everything. I'm like, we're going to take 2 cars. She's like, no, we don't. I'm like, okay. I'm yes, dear. But it was good to get that first trip out of the way. Some of the anxiety of like what's needed, what's not. But I am now new anxiousness because the car was very full.
Why does a family of 3 need a Suburban? Well, there you go. Your first Christmas is going to be a little bit like that too.
Cool.
Where it's going to be packed now. It's like, here's a gift card. Here's a gift card. Go play. Here's some PlayStation bucks. But listen, we go live on Mondays and Wednesdays because we like having the conversation with y'all. So I want to say hello to some folks that were in here bright and early, like John Harrell. He says, good morning and happy Monday, everyone. Good morning back right at you, John. Hope you're doing well. Hope this weather's keeping your tires hot and sticky when you're out there racing. So good morning. And then Denver Luke's in. Good morning, Scott. How y'all doing? I'm doing good. Just busy, but busy is good. Jason, Oblivion Empire, says, good morning, guys. Hope all is well. Let's have another amazing show. Well, you've set the standard high here. Archangel with the smiley face, rise up, and the coffee emoji. I'll drink to that. I've missed my Lion coffee here. I've had to make some other stuff, and I've missed it. Harry Marshall Wood kicking us off over there on Facebook. Austin, he says, good morning, Scott and Nick, on a trip in Germany right now, but I had to catch the show. That's pretty awesome, dude.
Guten Tag.
Brad Clark, good day, everyone. And Michael Lewitsky, Island Mike. My daughter was asking about you as we were talking about where she wants to travel. She's like, don't you have a fan in somewhere? I was like, yeah, man. Island Mike, Puerto Rico. Look, the sunrise is here also. Michael Ronquillo rising up with the Atlanta Falcons podcast. Good morning, Scott and Nick on the Falcons podcast. And Quentin Bass. That feels like a newer name. Boss. Apology, Quentin Boss. Feels like a newer name, so welcome in. So listen, tell us a little bit about Benjamin Albright. He's Denver-based, so you know his history and that he is a guy that you can listen to a certain extent. When he says something, it's got some believability to it.
Yeah, he is somebody who's been in the Denver market for a bit, but he really has his name out there for his National Football League connections abroad. So it's not just, the Denver insight stuff. Obviously, he covers the Denver market, but he has a lot of connections to the NFL at large. Sometimes can be a little bit on Twitter. The trolls can, get him to come out of his shell a little bit, and he will interact with those folks, and that can be detrimental at some points. But as far as the connections go, He's not afraid to put stuff out there. And sometimes, as we talk about on here, things change in the NFL, right? It's very fluid. But a lot of times he'll put his name on stuff, and it does have backing with multiple sources. So I think you can put some validity into the rumors he says, especially in hindsight, things that could have been. There's some legs to that stuff for the retrospective analysis. So interesting when he does talk about some stuff. It's noteworthy.
So the noteworthy thing that he said is, and here's I'm going to get to the catch last, but asked about Russell Wilson being the Atlanta Falcons starting quarterback. He said, "I guarantee that would happen," Albright said on the Fantasy Football Metrics podcast about Wilson being the Falcons quarterback, and probably would have had Justin Fields as his backup there as well if the Atlanta Falcons had not fired Arthur Smith. Not sure I would have wanted that. Now, going through this entire process, starting in, how long ago, we started talking about, okay, the Falcons are going to need a quarterback. Pretty much the first time Desmond Ridder was benched, because we said going into last season, if Desmond Ridder gets benched, he probably will not be the quarterback in 2024. So I said all along, Nick, my number one choice was Russell Wilson and a rookie. My number two choice was Justin Fields and a rookie on that. And then Kirk Cousins was probably, third or fourth down the list of guys to bring in. Kirk Cousins and a rookie never crossed my mind.
Yeah.
But
I mean, yeah.
Where would you rather be right now? Would you rather have, would you rather have, and we've asked this question before, and now in hindsight, what do you think? Would you rather have Russell Wilson and $100 million poured into your team, $100 million guaranteed money into your team? Maybe who's a big edge this year? Was it Danielle Hunter? Maybe Danielle Hunter and Michael Penix at 8 still. You can still get Penix at 8. And Arthur Smith. Or would you rather have the fresh start with Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix, however you feel about that doubling up on the quarterback move, with Raheem Morris and Zach Robinson?
I think the big caveat there is the head coach. All right. I think we had Arthur Smith had worn out his welcome in Falcons country, Falcons nation for sure. So I think if it's Raheem Morris or Arthur Smith, I'll take the quarterbacks as it is. Now, I know we both agree that maybe it was a little bit over redundant on spending, that 8th overall pick plus the crazy money on Kirk Cousins at the position. But I'm happy to have Raheem Morris here in Atlanta and moving on from Arthur Smith, because it just was getting really stale, especially with his combativeness and just, somewhat arrogance on the podium. Like, how dare you question me? Well, the product on the field is questionable right now, Arthur. So that's going to happen, even though they're giving you softball questions from the media there. But I think that Wilson plus Penix or Fields plus Penix is probably the direction I would have gone in hindsight, because I'd rather take the young quarterback if you have conviction about them than Kirk Cousins. But it is what it is, that's where you're at now. But it is pretty interesting to hear them talk about Arthur Smith linked with those two guys, and they end up all linked in Pittsburgh anyway.
Yeah, good morning, Well, good to see you. She said good morning, Scott and Nick and everyone in the chat. And Michael Lewitsky says, I thought Smith didn't like Fields. Pretty odd to me. Let's watch what they do, not what they say. Arthur Smith is in Pittsburgh. Justin Fields is in Pittsburgh. Justin Fields was rumored to be a deal almost done to Atlanta. That didn't happen. What did happen was Terry Fontenot, who is still in Atlanta, spent a lot of money on a 400-yard receiver who is Justin Fields' receiver in Chicago. All of the moves I've seen said Terry Fontenot and whoever's left in Atlanta did not want Justin Fields. It's like, listen, this wasn't on Rondale Moore. We don't like that quarterback. We didn't want that quarterback. We do like his receiver. So I want that way. And again, going back to Michael says, I'd want Wilson and Fields and money for defense. Yeah, but then you still don't have any. You don't have any quarterback beyond this year. That's the problem. Wilson's on a 1-year deal. Fields is a big question mark. Money on that. But I guess I don't think you go Wilson Fields and then draft number 8 Penix overall. So I still go the either or, but it's the Falcons never. That wouldn't have surprised me more than Kirk Cousins and 100 million guaranteed, and then drafting Penix at 8. So I would rather have, if your choice was Arthur Smith and Russell Wilson and Justin Fields and a rookie, or Kirk Cousins and a rookie and these guys, and you didn't get to put that money into the defense with Raheem Moore and a fresh start, give me the second one. I wanted Arthur Smith gone. And again, I think he's got a chance to rebound, and I think he's a good coach. I think he did a lot of good things for the Atlanta Falcons. The culture, the ability to eke out some competitive wins, but the toughness of the team and surviving the salary cap, the guys always played hard for him for the most part, but he was still going to be the offensive coordinator, which was a huge problem. That I wanted Arthur Smith gone. So I would much prefer to have, again, it comes back. Y'all saw how I reacted. Most of y'all have been around here for a long time. You saw how I reacted on draft night. And even the next day, that I wasn't a fan of the resource allocation to the quarterback position. So even if my number one choice came through, which was Russell Wilson and a rookie at number 8, quarterback at number 8, it still wouldn't have been worth having Arthur Smith back. That's how I feel about that.
Yeah, and Arthur Smith, the main thing is just talking about quarterbacks, how he handled that position in general during his tenure in Atlanta. How could you trust him with a Kirk Cousins or a rookie quarterback? You couldn't. I mean, from Matt Ryan, Mariota, Desmond Ridder, Heineke, it was all bad there. So to give him 8th overall pick or $100 million investment, it just feels like you'd be one season away from that, faltering. And then where are you at with the position, the relationship, everything like that? So I'm happy that you have a clean sweep at the quarterback spot and the head coach spot, just so everybody can kind of be aligned on the same timeline. And I just couldn't imagine with how the team fell off last season, with the easy schedule, with the expectations, with the handling of the quarterback position. I don't think I could handle another season of Arthur Smith in Atlanta.
And In Pursuit of Excellence says, I was calling for Russell Wilson and build the defense. I agree. So was I. But the caveat here is we were doing that mostly in January, after Arthur Smith had already been fired. After Smith had been fired, the option to get Russell Wilson was gone. And then basically it was gone for Justin Fields too. That was no longer an option. Russell Wilson was going to go with Arthur Smith, the Pittsburgh Steelers. And frankly, the Pittsburgh Steelers are a notch above the Atlanta Falcons. I'm not talking anything. That's not crazy. Look at the rings, look at the winning seasons, the stability of the franchise, all of it. That's not a hot take. Russell Wilson going to play with Mike Tomlin in the Pittsburgh Steelers isn't much of a surprise. That Arthur Smith is a big factor there, but you were not going to get Russell Wilson with Raheem Moore, with a new coach and all of that. Established coach, offensive coordinator Arthur Smith. The Pittsburgh Steelers is probably a better situation for Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't know if in Pursuit of Excellence, I hear your point here, but I think if it was Russell Wilson or Justin Fields, with how cheap those options were, you're pairing that with a rookie quarterback. It's not Wilson plus build the defense, unless you're talking purely from a financial.
Here, let me, sorry to interrupt, Nick, but
yeah,
it's the option here was basically one of those quarterbacks, veterans, is a bridge to your rookie that you take at number 8, but then you have the free agent money to put into the defense that you spent on Kirk Cousins. You could have gotten three starters on defense, good starters. One of the alpha edges with the guaranteed money you put into Kirk Cousins. So that was the option, but for that option to have come true, Arthur Smith would have to be the head coach. No, thank you. No, thank you.
Yeah. It just had gotten stale. It was time. I like some of the run game concepts. The passing game stuff was rough. And again, he just totally mishandled the quarterback position from a play calling perspective, from a who's starting development perspective, from the options he was choosing. perspective. Now, some of that might come back to Fontenot. I don't know. I'm not in the room, but happy to have a clean slate. And again, everybody on the same timeline. Everybody comes in together. Now, that means it could be a little bit, herky-jerky to start, but I think it's good when everybody is on the same timelines, because then you don't have people coming in with, okay, this guy's trying to save his job, but this guy has rope or leniency right now, and it doesn't line up. So I think that's a good thing for Atlanta.
Yeah, I agree. It's again, Arthur Smith needed to move on. That was the most important move of the offseason. That one was the most important move of the offseason. I get some people in here because we posted this story last week. Some of the comments are like, who cares, or why are you trying to stir this up? Guys, this was one of the options that we had discussed, and it turns out it was a viable option. And what's fascinating is we have a chance to see the alternate reality play out. That doesn't usually happen. We get to see Russell Wilson and Justin Fields with Arthur Smith in Pittsburgh and see how they're doing and say, was this the right choice? That's kind of what we do here. The podcasting and the discussion, the prognostication, the reflection. That's, to me, the half the fun. The games are the most fun, obviously, usually, sometimes, but the predictions and then the reflection to see who was right, who was wrong. That's what I always loved about the draft. I always loved that about the draft. It's like, okay, I think this guy's going to do this, this, and this. Am I right? Am I wrong? That's why. And it's June, y'all. It's June. I thought it was to me, it's fascinating that we are going to get to watch the exact scenario play out, because that never happens. It never happens. It's always a fantasy football, hypothetical, what if. Well, by God, we're going to get answers. We are going to get answers, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to watching Russell Wilson and Arthur Smith in Pittsburgh, frankly,
and Justin Fields.
Justin Fields. That I think I'm looking forward to watching that whole thing play out, because, frankly, Mike Tomlin's a little bit on the hot seat right now too. Pittsburgh's going to be fascinating to me.
Yeah, and again, covering the Broncos, covering the Falcons, it's weird how intertwined those two teams have seemed to be since we have been covering them both together, Scott. And we got Roy coming in, says, good morning, good to see you. I see Keith Brugman's in the house. Good morning, y'all. Always great to see our guy Keith with the fantastic beard. And I see Keith and Ellen Johnson also says, good morning, guys. Thanks for all you do. Well, thanks for coming in, K&E. We appreciate it. Hope you guys had a good weekend. And heck, man, June's almost over. Time is flying by.
It's crazy, isn't it?
That's
I've got a couple, three more, baseball tournaments, and football season will be here. So, yes. And Roy, I was glad to hear your guest appearance on your podcast. Went really, really well. Let's pivot to the offseason grades from Seth Walder of ESPN. And again, when you just look at a grade in a vacuum, it doesn't really tell you much. You also have to remember, what did everybody else get? What's the curve look like? So Seth Walder has the Atlanta Falcons sitting at a C-, which was 29th on his offseason grades. 29th on your offseason grades. And basically, it was, the same discussion we've had a lot. Did the Falcons allocate their resources the best way possible to address the needs of their team? That's the overall question. The biggest need was quarterback, and they overspent on quarterback. Doing one or the other is probably the right thing. Doing both it seems like an overcorrection. You're eating into the rookie contract. You're not maximizing your chance on your veteran. All of those things we've hit out. But a C- overall, but more importantly, let's just say in the rankings, Nick, 29th. The Atlanta Falcons offseason acquisitions is 29th in the NFL.
Again, I think it has to be based on the misallocation of resources, in an opinion. But when you just talk about going from Desmond Ridder to Cousins it's impossible to say they're the 29th least improved team. I don't know how you could give them that bad of a grade. I think Ritter was, if not the worst starting quarterback in the NFL last year, definitely bottom 3. And Cousins last year, when he was healthy, was playing like a top 8 level. I mean, he really was. Now, some of that was probably O'Connell, a pretty good offensive infrastructure there in Minnesota. I can't remember if Justin Jefferson was playing last season early or not. I know he had a lot of injuries last year, but Cousins was playing awesome. So that alone, the upgrade from Ritter to Cousins, not giving Cousins a 100% guaranteed contract as well, because, I mean, considering what he got last time and the quarterback craze that everybody wanted, I can't imagine giving them that low of a grade myself, just for that fact.
Yeah, and I just put the link of how I wrote it up last week. But, it says signing Cousins makes sense because it allows the Falcons to take advantage. But, flip side, getting Penix makes sense. But doing both shows a lack of vision. Now, again, I wrote it up in there. I gave the Falcons the benefit of the doubt on the timing of it. Again, we've already gone through what I would have preferred to do in my team buildings. So what? I don't have any say in this. And we will get to reflect and see how it works out. But Kirk Cousins was the number two rated free agent, period, by ESPN. Number 2 free agent, period. The Falcons' biggest need is quarterback. Their biggest need is quarterback. They got him on a decent deal. His money's not that expensive. The Minnesota Vikings are paying Kirk Cousins more this year than the Atlanta Falcons. He'll be in the 10 to 12 range in salary cap hits, probably less than that by the time the next 2 contracts get done. 1, 2, 3. There's 3 of them. The Atlanta Falcons' projected win total is one of the biggest leaps in the NFL. And they did the worst job in the offseason? Seth, dude. No. They didn't. They did a good job. If I address my biggest need with the best free agent, I do it on a fairly cheap deal, relatively speaking to the market. I did a good job. Silliness, I tell you. Silliness.
And then he also gave credit to the Broncos on the same article for, taking, what was it, the 6th quarterback, 5th quarterback, and being like, well, they didn't have any, I guess 6th. They couldn't have really traded up. And I understand.
Quarterback taken in the draft.
Yeah, they're like, I understand having to take the calculated risk. And even if he hits, even if he's just mediocre, the risk for a rookie quarterback contract is worth it in that spot. So you can use the same logic for Penix there. I understand you already had Cousins, but the rookie quarterback stuff and the value there still carries. And for being somebody who's analytically driven, he should know. I mean, no doubt he knows just how important getting nothing matters if you don't get quarterback right. So the 2 shots, I mean, I understand it's an expensive payment. You bypass, there's what's the word I'm looking for? You bypassed other talent options there when you went either Cousins or Penix. One of those could have been a lot more players on the offense or defense that could have helped you out. But getting the quarterback right is the most important thing. So again, would I have done that? Would I had the cojones to pay Cousins and then draft Penix at 8? No, I would not have. We'll see how it works out. But that is I think it's a little bit out of both sides of his mouth. And it does surprise me from being somebody so analytically driven to be like, well, maybe they overspent, but the analytics show if you don't have a quarterback, you're sunk. So maybe give them a 17th grade, because there's no doubt they improved from Ritter to Cousins, and probably the biggest improvement of any team in the NFL this season in the quarterback spot.
From an analytics standpoint on projected wins, the Falcons are the most improved team in the NFL. But their offseason was 29th. Dude, come on. This is the same guy that said that drafting Bijan Robinson, I couldn't remember, and I can't find it because my old site kind of got buried, either inexcusable or unexplainable. I'm pretty sure he said inexcusable. I'm like, all right, Bijan Robinson turns into Christian McCaffrey. Is that worth a number 8 pick? Yes. Yes, it is. Was Bijan Robinson my first choice? No, he was not. Can I explain the pick? Pretty damn easily I can. It's very justifiable. So I put a little bit more commentary into that post about, if y'all have read this, it didn't do a ton of views. It did some, but I said it was no surprise when his name was atop ESPN's offseason grades. I was going to have to spin the scroll wheel on my mouse to get to the bottom of my page like I was on The Price is Right. And hopefully some of y'all get that reference. Walder didn't disappoint. He gave the Falcons a C- for their offseason moves, only 3 teams getting worse grades. I felt strongly enough about that to put it in writing. Podcast is one thing, but when you put it in writing, it's out there. I think 29th out of 32 teams, when a team signs your number 2 free agent on a good deal to fit their biggest need, is asinine. I think it's asinine, Nick. No matter what else you do for the games, for the sport's most important position, I think it's asinine. Flat out.
Yeah, I couldn't get behind it because we already talked about it, but going from Ritter to Cousins is such an unbelievable improvement. And I think moving on from Arthur Smith too. Now, maybe
that wasn't even included. How about the offseason moves in the coaching staff?
Yeah.
There's some unknowns in there. I know.
Yeah.
But one of the things I like best, and Nick, apologize for interrupting you again.
It's okay.
One of the things I like about Arthur Smith is I thought he built a hell of a staff for the most part. Ryan Nielsen was a hit. You've got I want to say Lombardo. Guys, help me out. The offensive line coach's name stayed. Jerry Gray stayed. I thought he built a good staff, and the guys that I thought, the position coaches that I really liked, are still here. Really, really good job this offseason. Aside from the unconventional move of overcorrecting at the quarterback position, which is, if I'm grading, y'all know how I would grade that, but it doesn't mean I give them a freaking F, which is what you are if you're 29th out of 32 teams. That's an F. They just don't have the balls to put an F next to people's names because these are their partners in their media partners for the league.
Yeah.
So on that note,
don't agree with it. Again, I mean, there's areas the Falcons have questions on this season, but we've talked about it on here too. I think it's an important caveat. This is projection, and projection is hard, especially when you're trying to do it for 32 teams to give Seth a little bit of grace. I've been trying to give people more grace in life, Scott.
I'd give him more grace if I said if it wasn't so predictable.
Yeah.
It's totally predictable. There's a few absolutes in life and sports. One, the referees are out to get me. The announcers hate me. Those are the 2 big ones, that every fan, in the world thinks that. Dude, Seth Walder craps on the Falcons. That is flat out.
I do think, though, if they start winning and things, with offensive efficiency and stuff, then we will see that change. Falcons very much have been an afterthought, and they were a disappointment last season, without a doubt, considering the state of the NFC South. But as you mentioned, the win total is high, and the tune will change if the Falcons are winning. I do believe that there will be buts, because of course there will be. It's the NFC after all, and the NFC South specifically. But if Falcons start winning and Cousins plays at a high level, and everything looks like it's clicking, tunes will change. Again, projection versus retrospection is very different.
Matthew Petey fan. Petey is the GOAT. Says, I can't wait to see Justin Fields return kicks. Might be he's only on a 1-year deal. See what you can do. I mean, we talk about him as like a bridge quarterback or whatnot. Same with Zach Wilson. It's like, oh, maybe he's a reclamation project and you can trade him. No, you can't. They're on 1-year deals, y'all. In order to do that, you have to play them. Mm-hmm. And we can get into we're going to get into that maybe a little bit on Broncos for Breakfast at 9:30 when we switch over there. Sherrod Thomas, good to see you. Says, good morning, fellas. Good morning to you. Harry Marshall Wood said the new defensive line might be a different story. A lot of new players there. The defensive line, again, this was a draft for the future. Kirk Cousins, and that's what I said. It was just kind of the overall offseason was just, it didn't kind of sync up. It was like, okay, we want to get better for now, but we're not going to try and we're not going to go for it better. We just want to get a little better so that we're better and we're improving, but we're really, really focusing on 3 years down the line. That's when you're drafting the rookie quarterback and you go 4 defensive linemen. So that's fine. Right now, Falcons fans, did we expect Dallas Turner was going to turn this team into a Super Bowl contender? Probably not. Probably not. But it's kind of strange. And I think Kevin Knight of the Falcoholic put it best. It's kind of strange to see a team admit that so early. It's like, oh, we're going to be better, but we're not going to be good enough. So we still need to build for the future. Oh, okay. Okay. I understand. I understand. And again, I think if Raheem Morris was the coach on Thanksgiving Day, I don't think Kirk Cousins is an Atlanta Falcon. I think they go all in on the quarterback position in the draft. Chris Walker, he says, good morning, Scott and Nick, along with everyone watching. Good to see you. JB says, I think we're set up now for now and the future. I think you're immediately better now. And then again, Kirk Cousins didn't turn you into a Super Bowl contender. It just didn't happen. But you'd think if you're spending that much money now that you're going to try and add to it. And that's what's caught everybody by surprise. But we've hit on that a zillion times. Real quick, and then we're gonna get out of here. The Atlanta Falcons had 3 players on the top 100 of Pete Prisco's top 100 list. Can you name them, Nick?
3 players in the top 100.
2 are easy.
I would go AJ Terrell.
Nope.
Obviously. Then you have Bijan Robinson, maybe.
Nope.
Wow, the 2 that are easy. Lindstrom obviously has to be one.
Chris Lindstrom's easy.
I'm gonna be very upset if not. Okay.
One of them was all pro, dude. Come on now.
Oh, Grady Jarrett.
No, Jesse Bates.
Oh, duh. God, yeah, Jesse Bates. Yeah.
It is 6 a.m. where Nick is this morning. And he's probably been up since that, but it's Bates and Lindstrom. And then the third one, there's a lot of candidates in there, but it was Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins was a top 100 player. Now, most importantly, is at the end of the season, where do we start talking about top 100 players? Because I think Drake London's knocking on the door. I think Drake London is in there. If you do a draft, you like to say this all the time, Nick. If you do a draft of the league, this has to do with youth and that type of stuff too. But does Drake London make it past the 3rd round? Does Drake London go in the 4th round?
If you take out quarterbacks, because typically when you see that, like the first 20 of the first 30 picks will be quarterbacks. But again, going back to how valuable the position is, but he would definitely be up there. I mean, I know there's a huge influx of wide receivers recently, but it's not like he has shown that he can't play. He's played in spite of the low volume and inconsistent quarterback play. So London is definitely one who is on the arrow pointing up. Again, I'm trying to avoid Falcons and Broncos, maybe because I keep taking Kyle Pitts and he keeps disappointing me in fantasy football. But
I'm a jinx. I always drafted Saints.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm like, all right, if they win, I win. And if they lose, well, good.
Yeah. But I mean,
I don't play fantasy football anymore. It's too much stress for me. I was like, I don't want to stay up until 1 a.m. on a Monday night to see if my backup tight end gets 3 points. Yeah. I'm sleeping, dude.
But Robinson and London for sure are 2 that are ascending talent that could easily make the top 100 after this season. Yeah,
again, I agree. I think more importantly, it's like, okay, there's only 3 on there. Terrell had that nuclear 2021 where I think PFF had him like the number 1 receiver, top 2 or 3 cornerback in the league. He's fallen off a little bit in the last year. So, okay. Bijan Robinson, for all the hemming and hawing, was top 10 in yards from scrimmage last year. He was still top 10.
Yeah.
And is he going to get worse? I mean, I don't think it's a hot take to say that Bijan Robinson and Christian McCaffrey could have similar numbers by the end of the season. Again, assuming everybody stays healthy. It's always the caveat. It's like you want to just kind of run that across the bottom. Yes, everything we were talking about assumes everybody stays healthy. But Bijan Robinson should be in there. And frankly, Drake should be in there. Kyle Pitts should not be in there. But coming out of this season, it won't surprise me if he is.
Any of the offensive pass catchers, right? the big three on that offense, Robinson, Pitts, all makes sense. And also, I think with better offensive play, your pass rush specialist defensive players probably stand out. As we see here, Terrell a victim of no pass rush. Terrell probably a victim of having to play, leather helmet style football there with the offense that was there last year with Atlanta and Desmond Ridder and the turnovers in the red zone. So getting a lead, being a little bit more explosive and viable on offense should lend itself to your AJ Terrells and Grady Jarrett's as well. Now, granted, those guys are, let's be real, Scott, with AJ Terrell, even though he hasn't gotten that second contract yet, he's probably in the 9th or 10th hole, the 18 for a cornerback, because cornerback falls off so hard. And Grady Jarrett's definitely on the back 9, but those are two that also really could easily make it. I'm still shaking my head. I can't believe I was like, oh, who's the other guy? Oh yeah, Bates. That's a Terrell and Jarrett also really possible.
Yeah, Grady Jarrett's a top 100 player, but he was injured last year. Okay, fine. I'll give you that one. He missed half the season. But I bet you, Nick, there's some players on the list that missed half the season last year. I bet there are. Grady Jarrett is absolutely, and again, this is the victim of being, it's the individual paying the price for the collective, which I've said about Grady and I've said about Chris Lindstrom since y'all have known me. I'm looking at, it wasn't one of the bigger ones, but it was like a Pro Football Nation something that got linked. I saw it come through and it had their all-decade team, from 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Chris Lindstrom wasn't on it. Quentin Nelson was. No effing way. No way. Chris Lindstrom, and it's only 20, that's only 4 seasons. 21, 22, 23. We've only played 4 this decade. Chris Lindstrom has outperformed Quentin Nelson by a long shot the last 3. But Quentin Nelson still has that name. He still has that name recognition. Having Quentin Nelson ahead of Chris Lindstrom means you're not paying attention, which happens when you've had a losing season every year in the 2000s.
Quentin Nelson has an unbelievable pre-draft pedigree, right? Like leading up, he had unbelievable press. There was taking a guard top 6 as he went. That you don't see that very often. So he has that going for him as well. A lot of people pushing with that and that. The pre-draft stuff, especially for media, is hard to move on from. Now, obviously, Lindstrom was a first-round pick too, but there's a difference between being a top 10 interior offensive line guy versus what was Lindstrom, 16, 17, something like that.
I think he was. I thought he was between 10 and 16 in there. He's easy to find because I just went to PFF guard rankings from last year to see where Quentin Nelson is, and again, I have to spin that wheel down to get down to the bottom. But here's Lindstrom right at the top. He's number 1, so I can pick him out real easily. 14th. He was the 14th selection in 2019. Now, Quentin Nelson had a better year. He moved up to a 70.8 grade, which put him 16th, which puts, let me see his player page over the last several years. Quentin Nelson, the last several years, 2023 was 70.8, 2022 was 68.4, and 2021 was 69.1, according to PFF. Now, PFF might not be the end-all, be-all, but PFF can tell the damn difference between a 65 and a 95.
Yeah.
Chris Lindstrom's grades the last 3 years, 87.6, 95.0, and 83.7. If you are saying Quentin Nelson has been a better guard this decade than Chris Lindstrom, you ain't paying attention.
Phooey.
And that happens when you don't win games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's tough for sure. Now, did that list have anything to do with left guard, right guard? Like, did they only pick one?
No, it was all guards.
Okay. All right. Well,
it was just, I'm pretty sure it was just guards. Guard centers. I think they broke out left tackle and right tackle, but it was just guards. So I think it also had Zach Martin. Okay. It had the Cleveland guy that I can't pronounce his name, Joe Bethone.
Batinho.
Him, that guy. It had him, who's widely considered, and it had Quentin Nelson. It may have had one more. There may have been 4 guys on the list, but no Chris Lindstrom, which is just, again, this is what I'm talking about. When you look at these lists, that the collective is bringing down the individual, and that pisses me off. It's not fair to Chris Lindstrom. It's not fair to Grady Jarrett. Like, listen, I know the Falcons have been cheeks the last 7-8 years. That doesn't mean every player on them has been bad. In fact, in order to get any kind of recognition, they have to be that much better than everybody else. And Chris Lindstrom 2 years ago was the highest graded football player in the NFL, period, by PFF. Period. He was number 1. So, yeah, I get fired up about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, gets me fired up. Mark Wilson, thank you so much for the $9.99 mark. Expect the offense to end up no worse. Top 15. Yeah, it's gonna be great, man. It could be, there's just so many new parts, right? I love the infrastructure, the young players, but the variety of wide receivers. I don't think you have a really established wide receiver too, and you have a new offensive coordinator. Lord knows what happens with the quarterback coming back from injury. It could be where you have a little bit of a slow start. Also, the schedule at the beginning is a little tougher than the rest, but I mean, top half of the league scoring, I don't think that's crazy to say at all. Mark, I think you even should aim higher. I expect top 15, but I think top 8 is not out of the question, even though maybe you lack that, bona fide, no doubt number 1 guy. Maybe there's going to be, some people have said that maybe the offensive line slips a little bit, because that's one thing that Arthur Smith was actually really good at, was protecting the offensive line and helping elevate them a touch. So we'll see. It's all question in theory in this point, but top 15, I think that's a very reasonable expectation, and I might even shoot a little higher.
Harry Marshall Wood says top 10 offense easy. I won't say easy, but Mark, and it surprised me, and it still surprises me a little bit, that the Atlanta Falcons scoring offense in 2022, with Marcus Mariota starting the majority of those games, was 15th. Their scoring offense was 15th, and that was with playing suffer ball. That was trying to slow the game down in a big way, limiting the other team's possession and trying to get Younghoe Koo a kick at the end of the game. They were 15th. If they're 15th this year, I will consider that a disappointment. I will. With all of the resources that have been poured into the Falcons offense, if they're 15th, which will be an improvement, because I think they dropped down to 22nd. They regressed last year in a major way. Salute you. That I'll be disappointed if the Falcons aren't better than 15th, because they were 15th under Mariota, and they've got a veteran offensive line. They've got, I almost want to say, veteran receivers. You know how old is, just shoot it off your head, how old is Drake London? Don't think,
23.
just say.
23.
He's 22. Drake London is 22 years old. Now, he turns 23 next month, but Drake London is 22. Kyle Pitts is 23, but they're entering their 3rd and 4th year. Bijan Robinson is still young, but, so what? He's a running back. Young is good. Young is good for a running back. And you've got the maestro this year. You got your quarterback. That if they're not better than 15th, I'll be disappointed. I'll consider that a again, disappointment. As Jordan Brown says, I think it should be said, the Falcons should be expected to be top 10 in offense, and a top 5 would be a great success. Again, the top 10, I think, is a reasonable expectation considering the resources the Falcons have spent on the offensive side of the ball, including their coaching staff over the course of the last 4 seasons. Top 10. Top 10 should be the expectations. Yeah. 11 to 14, I'll be like, okay. 15 or below is a not failing grade, but it's a disappointment.
There has to be something. Okay, so I mean, I know we got to get on out of here pretty soon, but there has to be some obvious Achilles heel where the offense, because I don't think it. I guess if Michael Penix isn't ready, obviously knock on wood, if Cousins get hurt, maybe that's something that happens.
Assuming everybody stays healthy, run the scroll.
Yeah, assuming everybody stays healthy. The one thing where I'm like, okay, what could be the true chink in the armor? We talked about wide receiver too, but any good offensive coordinator, considering the blue chip caliber prospects and youth in this offense, even if you don't have, let's say they double team Drake London and scheme him out, roll the safety to him every time with a cornerback 1 on him, you should be able to get the ball, figure out how to run the ball with Robinson / Algier, or get it to Pitts. I know wide receiver 2 is a question, but the one thing where it's like, okay, what could really fall apart again, assuming everything is healthy? We kind of talked about it. Arthur Smith did a good job with the offensive line, protecting / hiding the offensive line. Can you do that again with the new offensive infrastructure? Cousins does a good job of protecting his offensive line, but McGarry's one where we've seen him in drop back pass situations, true pass sets where there's some Matador Olay kind of reps with the pass rusher. Like they just, what are you doing with your hands there, buddy? Where if he falls off dramatically, that's one where offensive line is you're only as strong as your weakest player in the unit. That's one where maybe it's such a detriment that it's bad. I don't think that happens, but just looking at the roster, that's the one spot where it's like, okay, if he struggles so bad in pass protection, maybe the whole unit craters where it is 15 to 16 to a certain extent. Not likely, but I'm just trying to think of what could possibly lead to that.
Yeah, I think that's a good shout. And the Falcons fans in here have brought that up, that you got to watch out for McGarry in a passing offense. I think there's three. There's three you have to watch for. Where's Kirk Cousins' level of play this year, coming off an injury and he'll be 36 when they start playing. That's one. Two is you still do have a rookie offensive coordinator. I don't think Zach Robinson has called plays in the NFL. I'm like 90% on that. We've seen what rookie coaches can look like in this league when you just assume they're going to be good. And three, rookie quarterback, McGarry. Oh, it's McGarry. The pass pro was Cousins, Robinson, McGarry. Those are the three I think you have to look out for on those. And it was worse than I thought. The Falcons were actually 26th. They went from 15 to 26th last year, despite using the number 8 pick on a running back and having a anointed starter at quarterback. And that cost some people their jobs when the expectations were you went from 15th, poured a first and a second rounder in the offseason into your offense, and Matthew Bergeron and Bijan Robinson, and you got significantly worse. That was going to cost people their jobs, which takes us back to the beginning of the show where, for me, whether you agree, I'm not going to agree with every move. That's impossible. I don't agree with myself half the time, let alone every move that other people make. Whether you agree with exactly how every single move was done, saying that this offseason, the moves made in this offseason was a 29 of 32 was freaking ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So on that note, y'all, we are going to get out of here. Any final words, Nick?
No final words. Obviously, excited to see what the Falcons can do this year. Don't really care too much. I mean, again, I know that Seth Walder is pretty harsh on the Falcons, but until they prove not to underwhelm, I think that'll be the case for most people. And I don't think he has a personal vendetta against the Falcons. I think it's more the Falcons' consistent letdown leading to the bad grades. It's like a student. It's like you have a student coming in that you've had before or you heard from last year, and he's consistently struggled. Well, you have an idea of what it's going to be. You have a bias against them. And once the results start changing, maybe your perspective can change. But we need to see it from the Falcons.
Let me put this in perspective for you. Assuming everyone stays healthy, for them to be 29th out of 32 teams in their offseason moves, they would have to go from 7-10 to, at best, 5-12. If you are bad and got worse, you are worse. What are the odds this team goes 5-12? Do you think this team's going to go 5-12?
No.
Come on. Seth?
No.
If you want to set the over-under on wins at 5, we'll put a year's salary on it, then start writing, brother. All right, guys, we're going to get out of here. Real quick on Trevor. McGarry was a top-rated tackle by Pro Football Focus. That was 2 years ago. He kind of regressed last year when they started throwing the ball around, and a lot of that was on his run blocking. If you look at his splits between his run blocking and his pass blocking has always been, at best, he's improved to average. I'll take average. If he ends up being grading out 65 to 70 on pass pro, I'll freaking take that right now because he's a 90 on run blocking. I'll take that at right tackle. The fear is that he regresses back from there. So there's that's where that comes in, Trevor. So appreciate it, everybody. Want to say thank you to Mark Wilson with the super chat. Helps keep the lights on, my forehead nice and shiny, and Keith coming in with some stars as well. Hit the comments after the fact. I'm very active on YouTube. I try and check the Facebook ones, but it's just easier for me to get to on YouTube. Appreciate the feedback, everybody. We will be back on Wednesday morning to hit more of this, and hopefully the air conditioning upstairs will be back on in my house, and I won't have to be all coffeeed up to do the show. Great show today. At least, I had a lot of fun. So on that note, we're going to get out of here. If you want to continue the conversation, Nick and I are going to hop over to youtube.com/Mile High Huddle to talk Broncos for breakfast. Otherwise, we'll see you on Wednesday morning. Thanks for being here, everybody.
Peace.